The Arizona desert in 1885 stretched like a vast, unyielding expanse of red sand, its surface rippling under the merciless glare of a midday sun that transformed the horizon into a shimmering mirage of heat and desolation. Dust Mesa, a remote ranch outpost cradled between rugged mesas and scattered creosote bushes, baked under a sky devoid of mercy, its cracked earth whispering tales of survival, loss, and resilience. Henry Cole stood on the porch of his weathered ranch house, his broad shoulders stooped beneath a sun-faded shirt patched with rough stitches, his boots worn thin from years of solitary toil across the arid plains. At 46, his face was a rugged map of lines etched by grief and isolation, a faint scar across his left cheek a memento of a cattle stampede that had claimed his last hand years ago. His hat, battered and sweat-stained, shaded gray eyes that carried a quiet despair, a man alone since his wife and son perished in a brutal raid 5 years prior, leaving him with a shovel, a rifle, and a heart heavy with unhealed wounds that gnawed at his soul with every passing day. He'd come outside to mend a fence, the dry wood splintering under his calloused hands, a task that felt more like a ritual to occupy his mind than a necessity for a ranch on the brink of collapse. The herd was gone, the crops failed, and the silence of the mesa had become a companion to his growing resolve to end his suffering. As he paused, wiping sweat from his brow, a sound pierced the stillness, a faint, terrified cry, barely audible over the wind, coming from the direction of the dry arroyo beyond the barn. He turned his hand instinctively on his rifle, and saw them, 3 young children, no older than 12, scrambling across the sand, their small frames pursued by a band of raiders on horseback, their shouts harsh and unforgiving. The children's tattered clothes, 2 girls and a boy, flapped in the wind, their dark hair matted with dust, their eyes wide with fear as they stumbled, one clutching a small satchel, another a worn blanket, and the third a carved wooden toy. Henry's heart clenched. He'd heard whispers of orphan bands, children displaced by raids and famine, left to wander the desert's edge in search of safety. These siblings, endangered and desperate, stirred a memory his own son, lost to the raiders' blades, a loss that had driven him to this isolation and now compelled him to act. He dropped his tools, sprinting toward the arroyo, his rifle raised. "Get down," he shouted, firing a warning shot that sent the raiders scattering, their horses rearing in panic. Leaping into the fray, he scooped the children into his arms, their weight a feather compared to the burden of his solitude, and carried them back to the ranch house, barricading the door as the raiders retreated, their threats echoing in the distance. Inside, the dim light of the shack revealed their plight more clearly. The eldest, a girl of about 12 with a determined set to her jaw, gasped, "I'm Lena." The younger girl, around 10, whispered, "I'm Sita," while the boy, no older than 8, murmured, "I'm Tano." Henry nodded, his hands gentle as he checked their pulses, finding them faint but present, their small bodies trembling from fear and exhaustion. Using water from his dwindling barrel, he cleaned their cuts and bandaged their scrapes with strips torn from his shirt. The children watched him, their trust a fragile thread, their possessions held tight. "Why help us?" Lena asked, her voice weak but curious. Henry met her gaze, his scar itching under the sun. "Lost my boy once to raiders. Can't leave you to die like that." Lena's eyes softened, but suspicion lingered, a reflection of a life shaped by hardship and betrayal. As he worked, the ranch's quiet shattered once more. Hoofbeats approached, not with the menace of raiders, but with a steady rhythm that spoke of purpose. Henry grabbed his rifle, the children huddling close, and peered out to see them. A group of Apache riders, their faces painted with earth tones, their spears and bows glinting in the fading light, led by a tall woman with a commanding presence. She dismounted, her buckskin dress adorned with faded beads, her dark hair tied back with a leather strip, her face lined with the strain of survival, her brown eyes meeting his with a mix of gratitude and wariness. "I'm Kaya," she said, her voice steady. "These are my nieces and nephew Lena, Sita, and Tano. Thank you for sheltering them." Henry lowered his rifle, his heart pounding. They were in danger. "Brought them in." Kaya stepped closer, her hands trembling as she knelt beside the children. "Raiders attacked our village, took everything. I lost their parents in the fight. We've been tracking them since." She embraced the siblings, tears cutting through the dust on her face. Henry's mind raced. Raiders meant trouble, and this woman's arrival confirmed it. "Stay," he said, the words slipping out. "You're safe here." Kaya's eyes narrowed, assessing him. "Why take us in?" Men like you often take, not give. Henry shrugged, his scar prickling. Lost my family. Can't turn away yours. That night, the ranch buzzed with quiet activity. Lena, Sita, and Tano ate sparingly from a plate of dried beans Henry prepared, their strength returning, their satchel, blanket, and toy held tight. Kaya tended the fire, her hands skilled, her presence a disruption to Henry's solitude. We can't stay long, she said. Raiders hunt us led by Black Tom. They want revenge for our escape. Henry's stomach tightened. Black Tom's name was a curse, a raider who'd plundered Apache lands, his cruelty a shadow over the mesa. What do they want? He asked. Kaya hesitated, then opened the satchel, revealing a small, intricately carved amulet, its surface etched with symbols. A tribal heirloom. It marks our sacred ground. Tom killed for it. The revelation hit Henry like a gust. Such relics were coveted, a lure that had ruined men. But these children's lives were worth more. I'll protect you, he said, his resolve firming, though doubt gnawed at him about the amulet's power. As the fire crackled, hoofbeats echoed in the distance, growing louder. Henry grabbed his rifle, Kaya rising with a spear from her band. Shadows loomed 3 raiders, their coats dusted with sand, their hats marked with Tom's gang insignia. The leader, a burly man with a scarred face, dismounted. Cole, he barked. Those kids are ours. Tom wants them back. Henry's jaw tightened. They're free, he said, his rifle steady. Ride off, or we fight. The man laughed, drawing a pistol. You're a dead man, rancher. Lena moved like a shadow, her satchel striking the man's hand, disarming him. Henry fired, his shot grazing another rider's shoulder, sending them scattering. The third fled, shouting threats. Tom'll burn you out. Henry lowered his rifle, his heart pounding. Kaya's eyes met his, a flicker of respect breaking through. You didn't have to, she said. Henry wiped sweat from his brow, his scar itching. Ain't right. What they did, I've got my own ghosts. They settled in, the family's gratitude a quiet bond. Kaya offered Henry the amulet. For your kindness, she said, but it brings danger. The desert stretched vast, its silence a promise of more trials, but Henry's act of mercy had ignited a spark, a family forged in dust and peril, with Tom's wrath looming on the horizon. The Arizona desert unfurled like a relentless sea of red sand as Henry, Cole, Lena, Sita, Tano, and Kaya ventured away from Dust Mesa, the sun dipping low to cast long shadows across the arid expanse. Henry led the way on foot, his sun-faded shirt patched with rough stitches clinging to his broad frame with sweat, his worn boots crunching through the shifting dunes, his shovel slung over his shoulder alongside his rifle. His face, weathered with a scar across his left cheek, bore a mixture of determination and unease, his gray eyes scanning the horizon for signs of Black Tom's raiders, a quiet resolve battling the weight of his past solitude. Lena, the eldest at 12, walked beside him, her determined jaw set, her tattered dress fluttering, her small satchel with the tribal amulet swaying at her waist. Sita, 10, carried a worn blanket, her gentle eyes wide with hope. Tano, 8, clutched his carved wooden toy, his movements timid yet resolute. Kaya followed, her buckskin dress adorned with faded beads, her hands carrying a spear, her brown eyes vigilant with a guardian's protectiveness. The journey to a hidden Apache camp near Rattlesnake Canyon, a 2-day trek, was their goal, but the desert held other trials to test their bond. Their water was scarce, the canteen they'd salvaged from Dust Mesa reduced to a few tepid drops. Their supplies dwindled to a strip of jerky and a handful of desert figs Kaya had foraged. The sun beat down, its heat a relentless adversary, the silence broken only by the rasp of their breathing, the crunch of sand, and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. Henry's mind churned with the previous day's events, his impulsive sheltering of the orphans, Kaya's arrival with her warriors, the threat of Tom. He'd hidden the children to ease his own guilt, but their presence now drew danger, a price he hadn't foreseen. He offered Sita water, a gesture of goodwill, his hand trembling slightly. Sita accepted, her eyes narrowing. Why risk this? She asked, her voice weak. Henry met her gaze, his scar itching under the sun. Lost my son once to raiders, can't leave you to die like that. Sita's expression softened, but suspicion lingered, a reflection of a life shaped by loss and uncertainty. Kaya and the children walked with a quiet dignity, their garments rustling softly, the amulet catching the fading light. Kaya shared their story as they moved, her voice low and resonant. Tom's raiders attacked our village, stole our livestock, killed many. Lena, Sita, and Tano escaped with this amulet. It marks our sacred burial ground, Lena added, her tone firm. He burned our home, Tano whispered. We hid. Henry's heart sank. The amulet was a magnet for death, a lure that had ruined men, but the children's lives were worth more. I'll keep you safe, he said, his resolve firming, though doubt gnawed at him about the relic's curse. Their progress halted at midday when they reached a trading post tucked into a dry arroyo bone-dry, a haven for outlaws and wanderers. Henry needed supplies, his stores depleted, but Kaya tensed. Danger here, she warned. Men talk. Henry nodded, his rifle ready. Inside, the air was stifling, the stench of sweat and stale tobacco thick. A trader named Jed Carter, a wiry man with a patchy beard, leaned against a barrel, his eyes narrowing. Henry Cole, he said, heard you took in Apache runaways. Tom's offering a bounty. Henry's jaw tightened, his past with raiders flashing. Mind your own, Jed. Carter smirked, his gaze on the amulet. $200 says I tell him where you're headed. Lena's satchel flashed, striking Carter's arm, forcing him back. Speak, and you're done, she hissed. Henry stepped forward, his rifle aimed. Walk away, Jed. This ain't your fight. Carter paled, retreating, his laughter echoing. Tom'll hunt you down. Henry cursed under his breath. Carter's treachery would lead Tom straight to Rattlesnake Canyon. We move now, he said. The family's respect grew, their trust a tentative thread. You're brave, Tano said. Henry shook his head, the weight of his past pressing down. I've been a coward. The ambush came at dusk. Hoofbeats thundered through the sand, and 4 of Tom's men, led by a scar-faced rider named Black Tom, surrounded them near a rocky outcrop. Hand over the kids, rancher. Tom barked, his rifle raised. Henry fired, his shot grazing Tom's arm, sending him staggering. Lena threw a rock, striking another's shoulder, while Sita and Tano hid, their possessions clutched tight. Kaya's spear felled a third, and Henry's second shot dropped him. The outcrop falling silent save for the wind's moan. The 4th fled, shouting threats. Tom'll burn you out. They took cover behind the rocks, bandaging minor cuts, the heat seeping into their exhaustion. Kaya's eyes met Henry's, her suspicion easing. You fight for us, she said. Henry wiped sweat from his brow, his scar itching. Ain't right what Tom did. I've got blood on my hands from men like him. Lena nodded, her pain surfacing. He killed our parents for the amulet. Henry's breath caught the relic was the key, a prize worth killing for. We'll keep it safe, he said, his resolve hardening. Their bond deepened as they rested. Henry sharing his canteen, Kaya offering figs from her pouch. Why carry that amulet? He asked Lena. She held it up, its symbols glowing faintly. Our father gave it. It protects our sacred ground. Tom wants it. Henry's heart ached, his losses echoing theirs. I lost my wife and boy to raiders, drifted since. Sita's gaze softened. We're all alone then. Maybe we stay together. The night stretched ahead, the desert vast, but the threat of Tom grew. Henry taught Lena to use his lasso, her hands steady despite her youth, their partnership a lifeline. Kaya showed him Apache tracking signs, their trust aflame against the desert's grip. You're strong, Henry said. Lena smiled, a rare light in her eyes. You too, uncle. The family watched, their kinship deepening, a bond forged in the crucible of the desert, but the peace was fleeting. Hoofbeats returned, closer now Tom and his men, relentless as the sun. Henry chose a defensible ridge, setting up with the group behind rocks. We fight if we must, he said, his rifle ready. Kaya nodded, her spear poised. Tom's men appeared, their rifles glinting. Last chance, Cole, Tom shouted. Henry fired, his shot dropping a rider, but an arrow grazed Kaya's arm, drawing a cry. Lena shielded her, her satchel a talisman, while Tano's men struck, their spears felling too, forcing the attackers to retreat. They bandaged Kaya's arm, Henry's hands gentle. You're all my family now, he said. Kaya's eyes met his, a warmth breaking through. And you're ours. The desert tested them, its trials forging a bond. But Tom's wrath loomed larger, a storm they'd face together. Rattlesnake Canyon was near, but so was their reckoning. The Arizona desert sprawled like an unyielding crucible of red sand, its surface baking under the relentless glare of a midday sun that transformed the air into a shimmering furnace of heat and dust. Henry Cole, Lena, Sita, Tano, and Kaya pressed onward, the makeshift sled creaking behind Henry's weary steps, the chestnut mare Dusty plodding through the shifting dunes with a labored gait. Henry's sun-faded shirt, patched with rough stitches, clung to his broad frame with sweat, his worn boots sinking into the sand, his shovel and rifle slung across his back. His face, weathered with a scar across his left cheek, bore a determined set, his gray eyes scanning the horizon for signs of Black Tom's raiders, a quiet resolve battling the weight of his past solitude. Lena, the eldest at 12, walked beside him, her determined jaw set, her tattered dress fluttering, her small satchel with the tribal amulet swaying at her waist. Sita, 10, carried her worn blanket, her gentle eyes wide with hope. Tano, 8, clutched his carved wooden toy, his movements timid, yet resolute. Kaya followed, her buckskin dress adorned with faded beads, her hands carrying a spear, her brown eyes vigilant with a guardian's protectiveness. The hidden Apache camp near Rattlesnake Canyon, their destination, was a day's journey. But the desert held other trials to forge their resilience. Their water was nearly depleted, the canteen they'd salvaged from bone dry reduced to a few tepid drops. Their supplies dwindled to a single strip of jerky and a handful of desert figs Kaya had foraged. The sun beat down, its heat a relentless adversary, the silence broken only by the rasp of their breathing, the creak of the sled, and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. Henry's mind wrestled with his past, his wife and son's death to raiders, his failure to save them a guilt that shadowed his every step, the presence of Lena, Sita, Tano, and Kaya, a mirror to his loneliness, stirred a compassion he'd buried, their resilience a challenge to his despair. "We need to find shade soon," Henry said, his voice hoarse from the dry air. Kaya nodded, pointing to a faint shadow on the horizon. "There's a dry wash ahead. It might hold water," she replied, her Apache wisdom guiding them through the wasteland. The children's silence, broken only by soft gasps and occasional whispers, hinted at fears they couldn't voice, the amulet a burden they carried together. They reached the dry wash as the sun peaked, its shade a fleeting mercy against the scorching heat. Henry checked the sled, its canvas fraying further, while Lena and Sita scouted for signs of life, their movements quick, despite their exhaustion. The wash offered a shallow pool, its water brackish but drinkable, a rare oasis in the desert's grip. Henry filled the canteen, offering it to Tano first, his hands trembling slightly. "Drink, son," he said, the words slipping out unbidden. Tano accepted, his eyes softening. "Thank you, uncle," he murmured, a rare smile breaking through his fatigue. The moment was brief, but it deepened their bond, a thread of trust weaving through their shared struggle. The desert's crucible struck at noon. A sandstorm brewed on the horizon, a roiling wall of red dust that swallowed the sky, its roar a challenge to their endurance. "Get down!" Henry shouted, pulling the children and the sled behind a boulder, Kaya and the warriors joining them. The storm hit like a living entity, its force tearing at their clothes, dust clogging their throats and stinging their eyes. Henry shielded Tano and Sita with his body, Kaya and Lena huddling close, the tempest raging for hours, leaving them buried in drifts, their water spilled into the sand. As it passed, the desert revealed a new peril, a bandit trap, a pit concealed by sand, its stakes glinting near Lena's foot. Henry reacted instantly, yanking her back, the trap snapping shut inches from her. Kaya's quick thinking with a spear dislodged the mechanism, saving them. "Good save," Henry said, his respect for them growing. Lena nodded, her gaze steady. "The desert tests us," she replied. That night, they camped in the wash's lee, a small fire their only warmth, its glow casting shadows on the rocky walls. The storm had delayed them, the camp still a day away, and Henry's mind churned with guilt, his family's death, his years of isolation, now this family's fight. Sita offered him a fig, her hands gentle. "You fight for us," she said. "Why?" Henry poked the fire, his face shadowed. "I turned away from trouble once my family paid for it. Can't do that again." Tano's eyes softened, his pain surfacing. "Tom killed our parents, took our home." The confession hung heavy, a mirror to Henry's regrets. "Strength ain't just in safety," he said. "It's in sticking together." Lena leaned against him, her voice small. "The amulet protects our ground. Tom wants it." Henry's heart ached, his losses echoing theirs. I lost my wife and boy to raiders. Drifted since. Kaya's gaze met his, a warmth breaking through. We're all lost then. Maybe we find kin. Their talk was interrupted by a rustle. Apache figures emerged from the dusk, led by a tall man with a painted face. I am Chato, Kaya's brother, he said, his voice cautious. We saw the storm. Tom hunts you. He offered a water skin, his eyes on the children. You're alive, nieces and nephew. We thought you taken. Lena ran to him, tears in her eyes. Henry saved us. Chato nodded, offering Henry a feathered cord. You're kin now, rancher. The reunion was brief but heartfelt. Chato's warriors, 15 strong, joined them, their spears glinting. Tom's tracker, Black Tom, is near, Chato warned. He won't stop. Henry's heart steadied, his bond with the family a shield. We fight together, he said. Sita's hand found his, her trust a beacon. You're our uncle, she whispered. The words warmed him, a redemption he hadn't sought. The peace shattered at dawn. Hoofbeats echoed. Black Tom and 10 riders, their rifles ready. Chato's men melted into the rocks, leaving Henry and the family exposed. Run, Chato whispered, but Henry stood firm, his rifle raised. Tom's voice cut through the heat. Give up the kids, Cole, or die. Henry fired, his shot grazing a rider, but an arrow struck Kaya's leg, drawing a cry. Lena shielded her, her satchel a talisman, while Chato's men felled 3, forcing Tom to retreat. They bandaged Kaya's leg, Henry's hands gentle. You're all my family now, he said. Kaya's eyes met his, a warmth breaking through. And you're ours. The desert tested them, its trials forging a bond. But Tom's wrath loomed larger, a storm they'd faced together. Rattlesnake Canyon was near, but so was their reckoning. Rattlesnake Canyon rose like a jagged scar across the Arizona desert, its rocky ravine of red sandstone and weathered outcrops standing defiant against the encroaching dusk. The sun dipped low, casting a fiery glow across the canyon's rim, the air thick with the scent of sun-scorched earth and the faint promise of a cooling night breeze. Henry Cole, Lena, Sita, Tano, and Kaya, along with the Apache warriors led by Chato, prepared for their stand, the tension palpable in the stillness. Henry's sun-faded shirt, patched with rough stitches, was torn at the sleeve, his worn boots caked with dust and blood from his grazed leg, his shovel and rifle poised despite the ache in his muscles. His face, weathered with a scar across his left cheek, bore a grim determination, his gray eyes shadowed by the weight of his past solitude. Lena, the eldest at 12, stood beside him, her tattered dress fluttering, her small satchel with the tribal amulet clutched tightly, her determined jaw set with resolve. Sita, 10, carried her worn blanket, her gentle eyes wide with fear. Tano, 8, gripped his carved wooden toy, his movements timid yet resolute. Kaya followed, her buckskin dress adorned with faded beads, her leg wound bandaged, her hands wielding a spear, her brown eyes vigilant with a guardian's protectiveness. The journey to this refuge had forged their bond. Now tested by Black Tom's relentless pursuit, the canyon offered strategic ground steep drops for ambushes, rocky outcrops for cover, and a narrow pass for traps. Henry fortified a vantage point with Chato's men, his hands calloused from years of ranching, now skilled in war. Lena rigged tripwires with sinew, her movements precise despite her exhaustion, her satchel a constant reminder of their burden. The younger children assisted, stacking stones with Eli, a young warrior from Chato's band, their small hands trembling but determined. Tom wants the amulet, Kaya said, her voice low and strained. He'll kill us for it. Henry nodded, his guilt over past inaction fueling his resolve. We hold him here, he replied. Eli handed him a sharpened stake, a silent pledge of unity, the weapon's weight a comfort in his hands. Chato distributed spears and arrows, his face painted with earth tones, his warriors blending into the canyon's shadows. Black Tom leads them, he warned. He's close. Henry's heart steadied, his bond with the family a shield against the encroaching dark. We fight as kin, he said. Lena's eyes met his, a flicker of trust breaking through her pain. You're our uncle, she said, her words a balm to his wounded spirit. The sentiment lingered, a redemption he hadn't dared hope for, as the wind carried the distant sound of approaching hooves. As dusk deepened, the air grew taut with anticipation, the canyon's silence broken by the crunch of boots on gravel. Black Tom rode in with a dozen men, his scar-faced presence, a harbinger of violence. Tom, a broad man in a black coat lined with stolen hides, dismounted and called out, his voice a thunderclap against the cliffs. "Cole, hand over the kids and that amulet, or this canyon becomes your grave." Henry stepped forward, his rifle raised, his voice firm despite the heat. "You'll have to take them over my dead body, Tom," he shouted, his breath visible in the cooling air. The battle erupted like a desert tempest. Tom's men charged, their rifles and revolvers spitting fire through the dusk. Henry's first shot dropped a rider, the bullet finding its mark with a precision honed by years of survival. Chato's warriors struck from the shadows, their spears felling two more, their movements silent and deadly. Lena triggered a tripwire, a dynamite cache salvaged from an old prospector's stash exploding and sending a shower of sand and rock, scattering the attackers. But Tom's numbers were overwhelming, and a raider's rifle was a relentless predator, his bullet grazing Henry's side, drawing a sharp hiss of pain. Kaya pulled him behind a boulder, her leg wound seeping anew. "Stay alive," she growled, loosing a spear that struck a man's chest, her aim unwavering despite her fatigue. The canyon became a battlefield, its echoes ringing with gunfire and the thud of falling bodies. Henry fired again, dropping another rider, the heat numbing his hands but not his resolve. Chato's warriors fought with primal fury, their spears piercing the fray, while the children and Eli lobbed rocks, their small forms a surprising force. But Tom's voice cut through the chaos. "Lena, give me the amulet's secret, or they all die." He held a pistol to Chato's head, the warrior's spear shattered, his eyes defiant. Lena's heart sank, her satchel clutched tight. "No!" she cried, her voice raw with emotion. Henry's mind raced. He couldn't lose another family. He signaled Chato's men to hold, his gaze locking with Kaya's, a silent plea for a plan. Kaya stepped forward, her stance defiant despite her wounds. "Tom betrayed our tribe," she shouted, her voice carrying over the wind. "He sold our people to settlers for land, left us to die when we fought back." The revelation hit Henry like a thunderclap. Tom's greed wasn't just for the amulet, but for the sacred ground it marked, a secret her tribe had guarded. Tom laughed, his pistol steady. "Then you all die with your lies." But Kaya moved, shoving Henry and the children aside as a raider fired, the bullet tearing through her chest. She fell, blood pooling in the dust, her spear slipping from her grasp. "Henry, no!" he roared, lunging to her side, his hands trembling as he pressed against the wound. Chato's warriors charged, their spears a blur, felling 3 men in a surge of vengeance. Eli struck with a rock, stunning a rider, while Lena and Sita threw their satchel and blanket, distracting another. Henry tackled Tom, their struggle a tangle of fists and sand, until his rifle butt crushed the leader's skull, ending the threat. The remaining raiders fled, their horses vanishing into the dusk. Henry knelt beside Kaya, his hands stained with her blood, his heart breaking as he tried to stem the flow. "Hold on," he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. Her eyes met his, a faint smile breaking through the pain. "You're my brother now," she rasped. "Protect them. The amulet is their future." Her hand fell, her spirit slipping into the desert's embrace, her sacrifice a final act of trust. Chato bound the fallen, his men finishing the fight, the canyon falling silent, save for the wind's mournful wail. Tom was defeated, his men scattered, but Kaya's loss was a wound deeper than the heat. Henry cradled her, tears mixing with the dust on his face, the weight of her words sinking in. Lena, Sita, and Tano approached, placing the amulet, blanket, and toy on her chest. "She was our aunt," Lena said, her voice thick. "Now she's with our parents." The Apache carried her to a pyre, their chants rising, a tribute to her courage that echoed through the canyon. Henry stood, his guilt eased by her forgiveness, his promise to protect the children a new purpose. The canyon smoldered, the air heavy with loss and victory. Chato offered Henry a place with the tribe, and he nodded. "I'll honor her at the camp," he said, his voice steady. The journey to Rattlesnake Canyon had broken Tom's grip, but Kaya's sacrifice would resonate in the desert's silence. Henry's redemption was hers, and the amulet, her people's legacy, would remain guarded. The dawn broke over Rattlesnake Canyon, a fragile light spilling across the red sands, where the embers of Kaya's pyre glowed like the last whispers of a fading star. The air was thick with the lingering scent of smoke and the dry, earthy aroma of the desert, the vast Arizona wilderness reclaiming the battlefield with a quiet, unyielding peace. Henry Cole stood at the canyon's edge, his sun-faded shirt torn and dusted with ash, his worn boots planted firmly in the sand, his shovel and rifle resting against a boulder. His face, weathered with a scar across his left cheek, bore the weight of grief, his gray eyes glistening with unshed tears, the guilt of his past solitude softened by Kaya's final words. The beaded cord from Kaya encircled his neck, a symbol of the kinship that had brought him to this moment. Black Tom, bound and defeated, slumped against a rock, his raider reign shattered, his greed no match for the courage of a rancher and his newfound family. Lena, Sita, and Tano, the three orphan siblings, stood beside him, their tattered clothes fluttering in the breeze, their small hands clutching the satchel, blanket, and toy, their dark eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and hope. Chato, the Apache leader, flanked them, his spear lowered, his painted face etched with both loss and pride. The Apache warriors, led by Chato, moved with a solemn reverence, their faces mirroring the canyon's rugged hues as they gathered around Kaya's pyre. The flames had dwindled to a gentle glow, the sand around it darkened by melted wax and ash, a testament to her sacrifice. Chato knelt, offering a prayer in Apache, his voice a deep chant that reverberated through the cliffs, honoring a guardian who had transcended her role as protector and aunt. Henry watched, his hands trembling as he placed her spear once her shield onto the pyre, a silent vow to carry her legacy forward. Lena, Sita, and Tano joined him, adding their satchel, blanket, and toy, their offerings a tribute to her courage. "She saved us," Lena said, her voice soft but resolute. "You kept her promise." Henry nodded, the words a balm to his wounded soul, a redemption he hadn't dared to claim. The journey to the hidden Apache camp began, the warriors carrying the pyre's remnants through the canyon's rocky pass, its ashes a sacred burden. The trail was treacherous, the sand shifting underfoot, the heat of the day giving way to a cooling breeze that carried the promise of renewal. Henry walked with them, his side aching from the graze but his spirit lifted by their unity. The camp emerged a sheltered valley nestled between towering mesas, its floor dotted with mesquite and a faint shimmer of a spring fed by an underground stream. The Apache survivors greeted them, their faces etched with grief for Kaya but warmth for her savior. Chato led Henry to the spring, its waters clear and life-giving, reflecting the cavern walls adorned with painted symbols and woven mats, a sanctuary Kaya had died to protect. "Her spirit guards this place," Chato said. "You are kin." The tribe gathered around a fire that night, the valley's walls amplifying their voices as they shared tales of Kaya's bravery. Her gifts to Henry, her trust, the amulet were now symbols of her legacy, their weight heavier than the sacred ground they marked. They offered him a place among them, their eyes reflecting gratitude and hope. "You fought for her," Chato said, handing him a woven mat. "Stay and find peace." Henry hesitated, his mind drifting to his past, a rancher broken by raiders, his wife and son's deaths, a guilt he'd carried like a stone. Kaya's words, "You're my brother," echoed, her sacrifice a key to unlock that prison. "I'll stay," he said finally, "but I'll bring my skills to your valley. With your help." The days that followed were a blend of mourning and rebuilding. The Apache taught Henry their ways, how to channel the spring's water for crops, how to weave mats from agave, how to honor the land with rituals by the spring. Lena, Sita, and Tano became his shadows, the children's knowledge of their mother's traditions complementing Henry's ranching expertise. They constructed a small adobe home near the spring, its walls rising under their hands, a fusion of Apache resilience and Henry's craftsmanship. The desert, once a place of solitude, became a bridge between worlds, its silence broken by the tribe's laughter and the trickle of water. One evening, as the sun set, painting the valley in shades of orange and purple, Henry stood at the spring's edge, the beaded cord a constant reminder. Lena, Sita, and Tano joined him, holding a new satchel, blanket, and toy woven by the tribe. "For us?" Sita asked. Henry nodded, his eyes misting as he handed them out. "Your aunt would want you to have them," he said. Tano smiled, a rare light in his young face. "She gave us a home," the sentiment lingered, a bond forged in the crucible of the desert. The tribe celebrated with a feast, their songs filling the valley, Kaya's name woven into the melodies. Henry learned her story in full, how she'd fought to protect the children during Tom's raid, how she'd hidden the amulet to save their heritage, how her spirit now watched over them. His past, his failure to save his family, his years of isolation faded against her forgiveness. He wasn't just a rancher anymore. but a guardian, an uncle, to those he'd once failed. Chato approached, offering a carved wooden staff. "Lead with her strength," he said. Henry took it, his hand steady. "I will." Weeks later, the valley thrived, its spring nourishing new crops, its people strengthened by Henry's aid. He rebuilt his life. The Apaches help a lifeline, their stories a balm to his loneliness. Kaya's spear hung above the home's door, a shrine to her sacrifice, its blade a silent witness. The desert stretched vast, its red sands a testament to their fight, but it was no longer a place of solitude. Henry's redemption was complete, not in land, but in the family he'd found: Lena, Sita, Tano, Chato, the tribe all bound by Kaya's legacy. As the sun rose over Rattlesnake Canyon, its golden light bathed the valley, a promise of a new beginning. Henry stood at the home's threshold, the wooden staff at his side, the beaded cord gleaming. He was no longer just a rancher who'd offered shelter, but an uncle to children whose aunt's courage had saved him, whose amulet had turned peril into a legacy of strength. The desert whispered her name, and Henry carried it forward, a shared sanctuary born from the ashes of sacrifice.